Welcome to Business is Personal. I am so excited to have Dave Crane, the legendary speaker and facilitator, on my show with me. We're going to be talking about the COVID effect on the speaking industry in general. We're going to talk about the profitability impact of having executives that know how to speak. And we're going to talk about why it's silly for you to bring a free speaker to your corporate event. Do you feel disconnected at work? Are you feeling exhausted? Almost like you hate your job and secretly maybe your boss too? This is Business is Personal, a blueprint to discovering and creating meaning at work in collaboration with Smashy TV, a live streaming service in the Middle East for the driven, the dreamers, and the doers. All right, so welcome back. I am with Dave Crane, and not only is he a good friend, but he's one of my heroes because he does very expertly what is like the most it's the biggest human fear, actually, more than snakes and spiders and the dark and heights.
And death.
And death is public speaking. People are afraid of public speaking more than anything. And this is one of the most gifted, talented, and expert public speakers on the planet.
Can you be my agent from now on, please?
Absolutely. I would love to, actually. It'd be really fun. But you're the voice of cricket now. You're the voice of the Rugby Sevens in Dubai. And in addition to being an amazing public speaker and presenter, he's also just an incredible human being and a lot of fun to spend an evening with. And you're going to be over at my place on Saturday, actually.
That's right.
Yeah, it's backyard barbecue.
No, you said there's other people
place.
there. From what you just said, it sounds like it's just the two of us. So I just need to verify.
Yes, I invited other friends because they need to know you too.
That's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Man. But it's been really good getting to know you. I want to share, like the reason I have you on the show is because I want to share your voice with the audience. Like,
thank you.
These guys need to hear what you have to say. We had such an amazing conversation the other day about the toll that the COVID pandemic has taken on the public speaking and presentation and facilitation and entertainment, live entertainment in general, on that industry. So how was that for you? Because I know I suffered, but I won't tell my story. You start with yours.
Before the pandemic, I was traveling around the world hosting premium global events. And my other business was coaching CEOs, decision makers, celebrities, politicians to be able to speak on public because they tend to drop the ball so badly that going on stage and getting it wrong can cost millions of dollars or a ton of damage to your brand. And then when the pandemic hit, with immediate effect, everything went, all business, all connections, all events went to zero.
Yeah.
So, like yourself, you've got your family, you've got your livelihood, and it just got cut dead with immediate effect. And that's been almost 18 months to 2 years.
Wow.
That's been the case. So I had to work out what to do to start going. And so what we did was decide just stay visible.
Yeah.
And so within 3 or 4 days, a dear friend of mine who has been on the speaker circuit with me for 20 odd years, he's based in Houston, Texas, and I'm based in Dubai. And we said, why don't we just create a TV show and broadcast it every day until this is over? And we thought it'd be maybe 2-3 weeks of pandemic. And that clearly didn't happen. So we went live for about an hour every day. And we came up with a title, actually I came up with a title, The Toilet Paper Diaries.
It was hilarious, by the way. I watched it because I needed to be entertained during the lockdown because I was also out of work. You know, as an independent consultant, I'm a luxury item. And so the number one phrase that I would hear...
worth it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. But, you know, like as an external provider of, you know, training and coaching and restructuring services and stuff, like I'm a luxury item. I know that. And when lockdown came, that was the number one most common phrase I would hear on the phone is, we're just going to put everything on hold. Oh, didn't you hate that? And it kind of grated on me. But I get it. Like I get, you know, as an organization, you want to kind of like huddle, right? You want to get into your huddle. And that means people that aren't actually on your payroll, they need to step outside of the huddle for now just so we can make sure that we survive as a community. I get that. But it left a lot of us, yourself, myself, and a lot of people in the entertainment and facilitation industry, you know, sitting around watching Toilet Paper Diaries.
Well, we did the show, and we're reaching about 1,500 people live every single day.
Yeah.
We did the first 50 days, and we will talk of the entertainment business because we had guests from all around the world who are really... The guests that we had in our 50th show, we had about 26 guests, all reporting into the show would have been headliners in their own show anyway.
Right.
But because they're all tearing their hair out and wondering what do we do, they'd all turn to us as to what we did. So we went on to do about 100 shows. Over the year and a half since then, I've done about 200 live shows online. And I realized that where the ball is going, which is very important to understand, is towards this hybrid of being able to speak to camera, but also being able to speak in front of a live audience, and also being able to stream at the same time. And so if you can get all those connected and do them live, then you should be able to turn your hand to any event anywhere.
Right.
You know, because what happens is when you talk to, if you've got a studio audience, a small studio audience, and you're talking to them as you're doing this presentation, whatever vibe they get, if they laugh, they cry, they boo, they cheer, the person at home feels the same way because it just resonates with them.
Yeah,
so it's really important to get the whole vibe right. So there's about 7 different people to talk to in any normal live gig now. There's you in your head. There's you with the audience in front of you. There's a stage manager who wants to get it right. There's a sponsors who are making sure they've spent the money in the right way. There's also the next guests that you're talking to at the same time. Then you've also got the fact that you've got the people at home who are watching to see how it's going. And then you also have to think, what do I do with the footage? What am I creating? And is this going to lead to the next event or not to the next event on what I'm saying? So there's 7 different types of plates to juggle in any live event now.
Right.
Whereas before, you just had your audience, you had the people who are paying for you, and also the connection of what you're creating on stage.
Yeah, I think that complexity actually is lost on a lot of, especially people organizing those events. They don't get the complexity of standing on the stage and doing that. And I think that's led to the commoditization of the speaking industry. And this, I know this is a frustration of mine, is look, yeah, it costs money to get somebody with my profile to stand up on stage and say stuff, because the stuff I say is going to come from experience, going to come from education and all of that. But you can always get somebody to stand up there for free. There's always somebody that's willing to stand on your stage and speak to your audience about whatever they think is important for free. And that has been, I think not only is it dangerous for organizers and companies just to get anybody up telling their story, but it's a missed opportunity, because you have that the resource that you have is the attention of that audience for that time. And if you squander that resource on an unprepared speaker that doesn't really pay attention to the complexities of those dynamics that you were just talking about, I think it's a massive missed opportunity.
It is, it's huge. And what people misconceive is the experience that I've got, the experience you've got, the experience that speakers have got, isn't like buying something off a shelf in a shop, where you've got a physical thing, there we are, paid that money and there it is, see, I've got it.
Yeah.
You're paying for us as an insurance that we make sure the event works. You're looking at what happens. If you pay cheap for a cheap presenter, yeah, you can get them to sit there and we'll talk to camera, but you might not get your audience to stay. Because right now, when any platform or any website or anything is free to sign up to, is because you are the product.
That's right.
So literally, with that in mind, eyeballs, engagement, keeping people there, getting people to do, a call to action is the only game in town.
Right.
So you want to have somebody who creates that confidence, creates that relationship with the audience, and engages them so they stay all the way to the end and wants to come back again, because your brand now is associated with making people's lives better. And that's why you hire somebody good.
Yeah, but it seems to be the first budget line item that gets cut in any event, right? Like, we're going to spend too much on lighting, too much on food, we're going to spend too much on stage, too much on security. Now we have to have like masks and whatever is available to all of our people. We got to cut the budget somehow. So let's just cut the speaker, right?
Or they put the speaker as a last thing to add because they see it as the most flexible. And the problem with speakers is the same problem that you've got probably with life coaches, which is that...
Careful now, I'm a coach.
And so am I. But most life coaches are unemployed and almost unemployable because they can't market themselves. So they're incredibly skilled and trained and they can turn your life around like that, but they don't know how to sell themselves. So they do it for free because the business model says you've got to do X amount of coaching hours, and they find it very hard to turn that free into something. And so after a while, they stop doing it. But right now, post-pandemic, the world needs more available coaches to get people over that blip of emotional, mental health challenges. And so the life coaches, in my opinion, are the second army that should be out there working under the hospitals and under the doctors who say, I haven't got time, but I've got a great range of life coaches that could work with you. But they can't market themselves very well. And that's why, because it's not tangible, it's not so easy to see, people generally won't pay for happy, but they will pay for shoes, and they will pay for bags, will pay for haircuts, And because that's tangible and it's a quick fix, they don't realize that the problem is, unless you reinvent yourself and know where you're going, you'll never be happy. They're just bolt-on goodies.
Yeah, and I know it's the same for you as it is for me. I coach coaches.
Yeah.
Right? And even the coaches need to pay for happy. Right?
It's true.
But I think the axiom applies both to speaking and facilitation, in entertainment, in coaching. You get what you pay for. Or you should get what you pay for. And if you don't pay, you should expect not to have the same results as you would if you were to get somebody with a lot of experience and a lot of character behind that.
Absolutely. I mean, the big question that everybody needs to ask in any business or in any relationship with your wife, with your kids, with your husband, with your partner, with your boss, with your clients, is what's in it for them. Right. What do they get out of this relationship that you're providing? Because that's the only thing ultimately they're paying for. If you're in a relationship with somebody, if you think about your wife or your husband or whatever it is, and you think, right, am I thinking about what they need rather than what I want out of this? If you always look after what they need, they're always going to be happy. And so the same is true for when you're providing for an audience. Yeah. What do they want? They want to come out there going, thank you very much, that was the best entertaining gap that I spent with you. And that resonates whether it's a sporting event or a serious business event or a comedy event. You can play it so they have you as good company, and you don't have to play it so it's super serious. Right. I mean, I've always said to people, don't be funny, be warm. Because that's easy to do. Yeah. Funny is you can get it so wrong and lose the audience, so just don't bother.
I have a terrible sense of humor, by the way.
No, I love it. I've seen your shoes.
Oh, there's my shoes. Yes, that's true. That's true.
But the thing is, you've got so many polarized audiences I mean, typically I say to people, don't touch religion, don't touch the amount of money that you make, don't touch your spiritual values, don't touch gender. There's a number of different topics you just don't go near. Right. But outside of them, you can talk about anything and have a lot of fun with it as well.
Right, but then you're raising the complexity of the game by saying you have to be this and you can't be that and you can't talk about these things. And then we talk about the value of being able to speak and the fact that nobody's willing to pay for it. Now let's translate that value of being able to speak, okay, into the lives of CEOs and executives of organizations. I would love for managers to go to their jobs saying, how can I improve the quality of my employees' lives today? What value can I add? What are they going to get out of spending half of their life with me today? I would love that. And I would love also for CEOs, CFOs, CMOs, all of those, the executive class, to be able to speak in a way that's warm, not humorous. Absolutely. And be able to steer away from those difficult conversations, but provide enough meaningful value that they themselves have an internal audience in the organization. So how important do you think speaking is then for higher level managers and executives?
I think speaking's incredibly important, but it's all part of communication. So ultimately now, for instance, we mentioned earlier, your communication is also what you post online, it's what you have in conversations, it's what's going on in your head, and it's also what you do in front of a live audience. Yeah. So whether you're talking in a boardroom or in a one-to-one, or you're coaching somebody, or you're going out and talking to your entire team, or you're standing up at a conference, the speaking is all formed from a dialogue you have in your head. And whether that is, if you do it right, there shouldn't be a disconnect between what you're thinking here and what you're saying there. You should be able to switch it on and it goes blur. Right. This is why guys like Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, people don't tend to like him when he's speaking because he considers what he says. And so that split second makes it look disingenuous. It makes it look like he's carving up something to say to you, where he's not. He's just not comfortable in speaking. So he regards what he says with every bit that he says to the point that it looks like there's a thing called uncanny valley, where it's that thing where you look at, for instance, we have robots now. I shouldn't say about Mark Zuckerberg, but we have robots that when you see them speaking,
he's watching us now, by the way.
He always watches. He's been stalking me for ages, ever since I said, right, I'm not going on anymore. But whenever you see a digitized face, sometimes you go, that's really real, and sometimes you go, it's not quite real, especially now when you do CGI and you create Gollum and you create all these different brilliant movies where you got an animated version of somebody. If it's not quite right, you don't feel it's real. And that's a challenge that would be there for anybody who doesn't learn how to say it. Think of it in here. And once you've got used to doing it, you should just go blur. Because, for instance, I'm working tonight with a client who's a CEO of a huge bank. And He is a brilliant speaker, but he just can't speak on stage because he's worried about what he's going to say and what people will think. So the idea is to get him over that hump of fear and get him to a point where he's understanding that everything that's going on in his head, if he optimizes it and says it the right way, he can talk off the top of his head. Yeah. As long as he realizes that there's certain obstacles, what's in it for them? Are they going to buy into you? Are you going to present yourself in the right way? And also, sometimes if you think it's not the right thing to say, just don't say it, because you never know what's going to come back of it.
So is that then, would you say that's the best practice for getting over that fear is just exposure therapy, getting on stage and doing it?
No, I wouldn't say so, because I think you're just going to make a fool of yourself and just
because that could really backfire, right?
It can really backfire. Here's the thing. What happens is, ever since our caveman days of being hunter-gatherers, imagine a bear comes into the cave and it's staring at you. You've got 4 different ways. In fact, you've got 5 different ways. 4 different ways that you talk about. So the bear's there. You can either the blood starts pumping through your head, through your heart, all through your system. Your head goes empty, your stomach goes empty, and before you know it, you're attacking the bear. That's fight.
Yes.
Same thing can happen. The blood pumps. Same thing happens. Blood pumps to your legs, and you run past the bear in the cave. What happens normally for most people is the bear hasn't seen you, and so you freeze, hoping the bear won't look at you. Right. And maybe it'll notice that extra delicious neighbor behind you and take care of them instead. And so all your senses work overdrive, your brain's working overdrive, but you don't move. It's not a bear, it's an audience, a live audience, but that's what people think. So the way to deal with it is not to throw yourself into the deep end, but if you've got if you've got flight, fight, and freeze, face. Work out all the different things you need to say to people, how to deal with it, what happens if that happens. Don't learn a parrot speech. Get bullet points so you can be flexible about it. Learn to pace yourself like stand-up comedians. Own the space in between what you say. And the other way of dealing with it is to feel that you can become one with the bear. I would never recommend that. But what I do say is with every audience, the key to being a great speaker is to get the Wi-Fi code of the audience in front of you, and don't ever present, don't ever speak, have a conversation with the audience, except for you're not sitting with them, you're sitting on stage, but it should feel like a two-way process, except for they're not allowed to talk until you ask them to.
Right. No, that's true. For myself, I know I do a lot of things that bug me about my own speaking. I think I'm my biggest critic, and I hate watching myself back. I don't know if you have the same experience, but
when I watch you back, I get really angry. It freaks me out. No, that's all.
But when I'm watching myself like on YouTube or on my channels, or when I record, even this show, when I watch this show back, I'm going to be cringing.
Right.
Because for me, I speak too quickly. I don't smile enough.
Right.
I don't block to the camera enough. Sometimes I'll get so distracted and so involved in the conversation that I'll be like this.
Yeah.
And I'm not facing my audience. And I feel like I should do better at being conscious of the audience while I'm having my conversations with you.
Well, do you know why this isn't working for you? Because the audience isn't an audience. The audience is one person. It's 3 of us in a conversation. You're talking to me, and you're talking to one person. So if you said, "How are you guys?" to the audience watching it, somebody sitting at home or watching on their phones going, "What guys? There's something else here." Just like radio guys, great radio presenters say, "How are you all doing out there?" Well, not you all. It's a personal relationship with one person. If you make it bigger, it becomes uncomfortable, and then you break that Wi-Fi code. So all you need to do is be aware there's another person in the room with us, and every now and again smile and let them feel that they're part of this conversation. So that's it. That's all that's missing. The rest of it's great because you have a great way of talking that's from the heart. You're humble. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, and you dumb it down until you start speaking.
You do not have to say that.
That's true. And when you give your time and when you talk about things, you do it completely, honestly, open, transparent, and people resonate with that.
Thanks.
So when you look back at yourself, when I look back at stuff I've done, I couldn't give a monkey's. What am I going to do? Fix it?
Yeah, right.
You know, I can do better next time, but if it's done, it's in the can, great.
Right.
And I've died more times than most other people have done stuff, but at the same time, I've done bigger and better stuff than most other people have done. I've been in front of a live audience at Rugby Sevens in the middle of the pitch, and the power's gone off. Got a microphone, the whole audience is watching, 45,000 people. It's been raining all day, the electricity's gone off, no microphone, no sound system. So instead, what I said to the guys on the comms is put Wonderwall in big words on the screen.
Okay.
So they put that Wonderwall in big words on the screen.
Like the Oasis song.
The Oasis song.
Okay, right.
And I got everyone to start singing it. So we've got the whole stadium singing
no
without
way.
being able to use the microphone, and it worked.
That's
so
fantastic.
It's about engaging the audience and taking on a conversation and get them to realize that they are part of this conversation. Even if you can't speak, they're as important as me or as you, and that's what makes them feel personal and want to stay with you. That's what influencers do really well online, that makes people want to play with them and stay with them. And if you do it right as an industry expert, rather than doing it right as a look at me, I'm fantastic, even if you do mess up, even if you do get it wrong, even if you do go blah, 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 and the words not come out properly, people say they're human. Fine, done, next.
Yeah, that's right. I think like you'd be one of my benchmarks or mentors in terms of public speaking and what can be done on stage and engaging with the audience. And I think your example of the Rugby Sevens is just brilliant. It's beautiful. I want to engage better with my audience. Like I know I'm having a kind of a vulnerable moment at the moment, but I want to
have a group hug. Bring everybody in.
you, the one person behind the camera, come and give us a group hug.
Just reach out because and touch us.
My heart, Dave, is really to add value to people's lives with every bit of their life that they spend with me, right? This 30 minutes that you're spending with us in this conversation now, you're never going to get it back. Okay, so I want it to be as meaningful as possible.
Yeah, but it might go if you say that. Stay for another 15.
stay for the remainder of the show. But what I mean is, like, if somebody's going to spend 15 minutes of their life with me, okay, I'm going to put this out there, and then they're going to consume it, they're going to watch it, and I want to add value as much as I can. I want it to be as meaningful as possible. And I think if more leaders out there, if more social media influencers out there thought in that direction, like, how can I add as much impact as possible and drive value into these 3 minutes that people are going to give to me, right? They're going to share 3 minutes of their life with me. I want it to be a meaningful 3 minutes.
You're absolutely right, and you're doing a great job of doing it. Honestly, I think that what you're doing is giving yourself a hard time. The hard time you give yourself should be, I want to be better every time I do it, but not where your heart is. I mean, you can look at the statistics and the data and see how well it's working. You could do a survey of people and see how well it's working. But the fact is, we've got almost 8 billion people across the planet. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to love your stuff. When you work out who your audience is, then those people are in for the duration because they love what it is that you do. You get that Wi-Fi code, you engage them, they get something out of it. We're talking about public speaking, being able to be a better CEO, a better leader. And I think right now, if you can position yourself as a great speaker and be able to represent your brand on any stage, anywhere, then you will bypass people who are much better at doing the job that you're doing because you're more visible. And you'll get more people to resonate with you, and then it becomes a beauty pageant that the sponsors, the other companies will all gravitate towards you because you're visible, you know what you're doing. We've all had a kid in class who was a bit of a Dumbo, not very good at what they did, but really funny, and everybody loved them. And so those guys would always get picked. Why? Because they knew the most powerful person in any group is the most flexible, who can get on with everybody in that room. And then they can persuade people to do stuff for them for free because the currency is a relationship that they build up. So that ability to have that Wi-Fi code and relate to any audience anywhere is gold dust. Typically at school, we get that beaten out of us. Sit down, shut up, I'm talking, don't say anything.
Right.
And so those kids, where now they're CEOs, now they're decision makers, find it so hard because they listened to the teacher, they did the studying, but now that bit that should have been inquisitive and should have said miss, because everyone laughs at them when they get it wrong, now they have to find it and they put it in the box somewhere. So that's why I get called in to find what it was like when they were kids and bring it back again and reinvent it for a new audience in a new time.
It's amazing. Well, that highlights two things for me in terms of, because I spend most of my time conspiring on the behalf of companies, right? Organizations. How do we make our organizations better? How do we improve organizational behavior? And it highlights two things for me. One is the importance of investing in good speakers, because a good speaker at an organizational event can be the difference between a squandered opportunity or a really great teachable moment, a really great leverage point for an organization, right? So there's a huge opportunity cost that comes with the control risk of not investing well in a person who's going to be speaking to a number of your decision makers and the people dealing with your resources all at the same time. That's a huge risk. The second thing that's highlighted to me is the importance of having organizations invest in helping their senior executives become the kinds of people that can communicate well with vast audiences, because that's what their employee base is. It's an increasingly diversified audience.
You're absolutely right. And there's a battleground that most people don't consider. So you've got the internal workings of the person's head.
Yeah.
You've also got the ability for them to look after their audiences when they go out and represent the organization. But you've also got the internals of the organization, the way they speak to each other, the internal communications. You've got to take out the politics and create a relationship that makes people bond. Because when you've got a pandemic, and not even the pandemic now, we're in a world post-pandemic, but your team are more likely to be remote and around the world than ever before, and that's going to be the norm. And so your ability to speak in public, but to your team in a closed space, because it only comes out through their laptop, is fundamental.
Yeah.
Whether you've learned to speak in front of a live audience or not doesn't matter. Your live audience is your staff, and they don't have to be there. And they can open up Facebook and LinkedIn, and they can look at other stuff and YouTube while you're there. They don't have to pay attention. So you have to be engaging, and you have to make sure that it works. And if you haven't got that, then you'll hemorrhage teams. And you'll end up paying a fortune for people that don't perform because their heart's not in it, but they're just getting a wage.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think the leverage point for building discretionary effort through loyalty by creating the kind of inspirational communication from the executive level, I think that leverage point is not as well tapped as it could be. And people, I mean, they would need talent like yours and other speaking coaches to bring that in.
No other speaking coaches.
No, just you. He's the one, right? He's the one.
Well, let's think about two things. First of all, let's point out the fact that what do people earn money from? There's a formula for earning money. The effect of a job that you do, and also how cheaply you can be replaced by somebody else. So therefore, if you're a great manager, you might be a great manager, but there's lots of great managers. How well can you pinpoint what you do that's really special? That's what it has to be. But also you've got to look at what your relationship is with the way that you go out and do it. You have to be effective. You have to be able to reinvent yourself. You have to be humble, but you have to be very, very good in a short amount of time communicating the most amount of relationship possible. So when people are with you, brainstorming, creating a relationship with you, you shouldn't have them ever leaving your company, because even when they leave and they're not being paid anymore, they should still love the relationship they had with you during that time and stay in your brain trust. So they refer staff to you. They're still there for insights about what's going on in the audience. And if you're ever in their town, they should be able to meet you for a cup of coffee and a catch up, because even though we're not working together, they still respect you, because that magic time you had together never left them. Yeah,
well, look, we're humans, not resources, right? And so there's a few different kinds of managers. There's the managers that you follow because you have to, because they're the manager, right? There's the managers that you follow because you want to, because they add some sort of value to your life and you know you're learning something from them. And then there's the managers that you follow when they leave the company. You leave with them, right? And it's that kind of inspiration, that kind of loyalty that drives real performance on those teams. And I think you're right. I think if we don't get executives or higher level managers that are able to communicate inspirationally to their teams, then not only is it a missed performance opportunity for the organization, but you know it's a missed opportunity for them as people, because they have a voice that's not being heard, they have influence that's not being leveraged, and therefore they have profit that's not being harvested.
Absolutely, and if they don't do it properly, then they end up missing out on a problem that if you don't fix it right now, then the person next to you who's not as good as you will fix it to your audience, and you'll miss out on that, and you're always playing backtrack and always trying to catch up in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a no-brainer. If you can build up that relationship now by communicating, by speaking, and creating the brand that you really need to have, then you are on a roll to just win. You can write books, you can create TV shows like you're doing, have podcasts, you can create meetups, you can have webinars, you can do a number of different ways of creating content that people gravitate towards. So in a digital world, they can find out who you are, learn from you, whilst you're not there. That's real currency, that's real power. And every single person, whatever you do for a living, whether you're milking cows, or you're a plumber, or you're a top level engineer, you have a voice, you have an expertise. Share it with people, because if you don't, it dies with you.
That's right. Well, listen, I don't want things to die with you. So tell me, like in your day-to-day life, in your work, or in your job, however you would describe your job, because it's a little bit different than most people's jobs. What activities do you find are the most meaningful to you in your work?
Well, I create industry icons, I create industry experts, and people come to me on whatever level they are. I get them to hone their brand, their communication, their product, so then they can reach as many people as possible and be at a really high level that the world will appreciate. And sometimes it's molding, sometimes it's amplifying, sometimes it's getting rid and finding out the best parts of them, like peeling back the layers of an onion. So with my main work, I help people to be able to find the signature version of them that will resonate around the world. And so all they have to do is be themselves at an optimized version, and then everybody buys into them and their vision and their relationship. And when you're representing a brand or a company, by representing yourself, there's no more cost-effective or rewarding way to be yourself than be a one that changes the world, gets people involved, and makes someone to follow you, and you feel that every day is a pleasure. Yeah. It's never a tough job.
That's amazing. Do you hear that? I'll give you the thesis statement right now. Helping other people to become the optimized versions of themselves brings him the most amount of meaning in his work. Driving value on other people's versions of themselves. I love that. Thank you so much for being with me today, Dave.
Pleasure.
It's so good to hang out, and I'm going to see you on Saturday in my backyard.
Corey, it's an honor. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Do you feel disconnected at work? Are you feeling exhausted? Almost like you hate your job and secretly, maybe your boss too? This is Business is Personal, a blueprint to discovering and creating meaning at work in collaboration with Smashy TV, a live streaming service in the Middle East for the driven, the dreamers, and the doers.